to a point, but we perform to a point where we get everything we need for the mission, for our next, and have never sat with Jesus. All right. We have never sat with him to get clear instructions. And so, while Martha was busy doing great deeds, she only got bits and pieces. Because you can't serve and be covered about and be hearing and hear all that God was saying when she was saying it to Mary. And many times we are busy and we hear God but we're not hearing all that God has to say. And so many of us, unfortunately, we are operating on bits and pieces. We are operating on bits and pieces because that's all we have to go on. And those bits and pieces, we develop ministries. We develop strategies. And all in our own sense of purpose out of those bits and pieces of what God is saying to us. But God is telling us today is that we need to sit with him. That we need to take a day and sit with him and hear out, to hear everything he has to say for us and to us about our next. Before you go hopping on the next, you need to sit down and make sure that you know what your next is, that you have heard everything that God is saying to you. Because if you don't, you will find yourself with bits and pieces. Look at your neighbor and say, be careful of the bits and pieces. You must know Jesus did not necessarily remove all of her responsibilities. He became the center for which she was handling the responsibilities. Never take your eye off the prize. Never remove Jesus from the center. It doesn't matter what it is or who it is or who says it. Keep him in the forefront. And you will stay there. Stay seated until it's time to stand. Point number 3. Stay until it's time to stand. And how will I know? Tarry ye into Jerusalem until you are endued with power. Luke chapter number 24. He told them to go into Jerusalem and wait. They didn't know when it was going to happen. They were just going off what he said. They didn't know how it was going to happen. They were just doing what he said. Sometimes you just got to trust God in the waiting process. How many people in here feel like you're in a waiting process? Well, I got good news for you, baby. Just stay right there and hold on to the last thing God said. He told them to go to Jerusalem and wait and don't do nothing else but to pray. Mary demonstrates this progression. Mary sat at Jesus' feet in Luke chapter number 10. But in John chapter number 12, she began to return unto him and poured out an expensive ointment in worship. She started at his feet and she came back in worship. And similar did the disciples do as well. He told them to go wait for the promise of the Father. Acts chapter number 1. So they had to get up in one room on one accord, fasting and praying and seeking God's face. See, what was God doing? He was getting out of one, not liking the other. What was God doing? He was unifying their hearts. So whoever God elevated to be the front of the church, nobody would catch an attitude because they knew it had to be ordained of God. And what was God doing? It was getting rid of themselves. He was getting rid of their calendar. He was getting rid of their schedule. He was getting them on his time because the only time that is perfect, that's God's time. Every other time